The billionaire followed his maid to fire her, but froze when he saw her toddler in their tiny home. Alexander Pierce had built his empire on calculated decisions and unwavering resolve. At 33, he commanded a real estate fortune worth billions, owned properties across 3 continents, and had a reputation for being utterly ruthless in business. His employees knew him as fair but demanding. Cross him once and you are gone. No second chances. No excuses. That Tuesday morning, Alexander stood in his penthouse office overlooking Manhattan, his jaw tight with frustration. His housekeeper, Maria Santos, had missed work for the 3rd time in 2 weeks. No call. No explanation. Just absence. His assistant had left messages that went unanswered, and Alexander's patience had worn thread thin. He'd hired Maria 8 months ago, a quiet 28-year-old woman with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of a lifetime of hard work. She'd been perfect, meticulous, honest, never asking for anything beyond her modest salary. But lately something had changed. The absences, the distracted looks, the way she'd rush out the moment her shift ended. Alexander didn't tolerate unreliability, regardless of past performance. He'd learned that lesson from his father, who'd lost everything trusting the wrong people. Sentiment was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Cancel my 10 o'clock, he told his assistant, grabbing his coat. "I'm handling this myself." The drive to Maria's address took him to a part of Brooklyn he'd only seen from highway overpasses. The gleaming towers of Manhattan gave way to crumbling brownstones, chain-link fences, and corner stores with faded awnings. His Mercedes looked obscenely out of place on these narrow streets where laundry hung from fire escapes and children played around broken fire hydrants. He found her building, a 4-story walk-up with peeling paint and a front door that didn't quite close. The directory listed Santos, 3B, in faded ink. Alexander climbed the stairs, each step creaking under his Italian leather shoes, the smell of cooking oil and old cigarette smoke clinging to the walls. He raised his fist to knock on 3B, ready to deliver the speech he'd rehearsed. Professional, firm, final. But the sound that stopped him wasn't what he expected. Crying. A child's crying, raw and desperate. "Mama, Mama, wake up. Please wake up." Alexander's hand froze mid-knock. Through the thin door, he heard Maria's voice, weak and strained. "I'm okay, Mija. Mama's okay. Just give me a minute. You're sick again. You need doctor?" "We can't afford." Maria's voice dissolved into a coughing fit that sounded like it was tearing her apart from the inside. Alexander stood paralyzed in that dim hallway, his prepared speech evaporating. He'd known Maria was a single mother. It had been on her application, but he'd never asked questions. Never wanted to know. Personal problems complicated things, made them messy, made them human. The crying continued, interspersed with Maria's attempts to soothe her daughter. "I just need rest, Sophia. Mama will be better soon. I promise." But even through the door, Alexander could hear the lie in her voice. He knocked, gentler than he'd intended. The apartment went silent except for shuffling footsteps. "Who is it?" Maria's voice was wary, protective. "It's Alexander Pierce. I need to speak with you." A long pause. Then locks clicking, the sound of a chain sliding. The door opened just wide enough to reveal Maria's face, and Alexander had to work to keep his expression neutral. She looked terrible. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, her skin had an unhealthy pallor, and she was clearly running a fever. He could see the sheen of sweat on her forehead despite the apartment's chill. She clutched the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Mr. Pierce." She tried to straighten, to summon some dignity. "I'm sorry about missing work. I was going to call, but—" "Mama?" A small voice interrupted. A little girl appeared from behind Maria's legs, 3 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and a stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. "Is that the man from the picture?" "Sophia, go to your room, please," Maria said softly. "But Mama—"
"Now, Mija."
The child obeyed, but not before giving Alexander a long, appraising look that made him feel like he was being measured against some invisible standard. Maria turned back to him, and he saw her gathering every ounce of strength she had left. I understand if you're here to let me go. I've violated the attendance policy, and I take full responsibility. But please, I'm asking for one more week. Just one more week to find something else so I can keep paying rent while I look. I'll work double shifts, Sal. Can I come in? The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. I don't think that's appropriate, Mr. Pierce. I'm not here as your employer right now. He wasn't sure that was true, but it felt true. Please. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was tiny, a single room serving as kitchen, living room, and bedroom, with a bathroom and what must be a closet-sized second bedroom for Sophia. But it was immaculately clean despite Maria's obvious illness. Toys were neatly organized in a corner. Dishes were washed and stacked. A small table held coloring books, and a jar of crayons arranged by color. What struck Alexander most was the wall above the threadbare couch. Dozens of drawings covered it, a child's artwork featuring stick figures and bright suns and flowers. And in the center, a photograph of Maria in her work uniform, Sophia hugging her legs. Someone had drawn hearts around it in red crayon. I know it's not much, Maria said quietly, following his gaze. But it's ours. Sophia's safe here. That's what matters. Alexander turned to face her. How long have you been sick? It's just a cold. I'll be fine. Don't lie to me. His voice came out harder than he intended. That's not just a cold. Maria's composure cracked. Her shoulders sagged, and she sank onto the couch like her strings had been cut. 3 weeks. Started with a cough. Now I can't afford to see a doctor, Mr. Pierce. Without insurance, just the visit would cost what I make in a week. And if they run tests, if they want to treat whatever this is. She laughed, a bitter sound. I make $12 an hour. How do I choose between medicine for myself and food for my daughter? Why didn't you tell me? Because men like you don't want to hear about problems like mine. She met his eyes, and he saw no accusation there, just weary acceptance. You pay me to clean your home, not to burden you with my life. And I really tried to keep working through it. But this morning, I couldn't get out of bed without blacking out, and Sophia was so scared. Through the thin wall, Alexander could hear the little girl talking to her stuffed rabbit, telling it that Mama would be okay, that they just needed to be brave. Something shifted in his chest, like a door opening in a room he'd kept locked for years. Pack a bag, he said. Maria stared at him. What? Pack a bag for both of you. Enough for a few days. Mr. Pierce, I don't understand. You're sick. Your daughter is scared. This apartment is freezing, and you clearly need medical attention. Alexander pulled out his phone. I'm taking you to my doctor. Then we're going to figure out what happens next. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. Consider it an advance on your salary. He was already texting his driver. We can discuss the details later. Right now, you need help, and I'm in a position to provide it. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing this? Alexander looked at the wall of drawings, at the photo of a mother and daughter who'd made a home out of almost nothing. He thought about the speech he'd come here to give, about the cold efficiency with which he'd planned to sever this employment relationship. Because I came here to fire you, he said honestly. And I realized that would make me the kind of man I never wanted to become. Dr. Rachel Chen's private practice occupied the top floor of a medical building in Manhattan's Upper East Side, where the waiting room had fresh orchids and the magazines were current. Maria sat rigid in the leather chair, Sophia curled in her lap, both of them looking like they'd been dropped into an alien world. Alexander had made the call from his car, and Dr. Chen, who normally had a 3-month waiting list, had agreed to see Maria immediately. Because that's what happened when Alexander Pierce asked for something. Doors opened. Rules bent. The impossible became routine. But watching Maria clutch her daughter and stare at the abstract art on the walls, Alexander felt the weight of that privilege in a new way. This was normal for him, walking into the best medical care money could buy. For Maria, it was clearly overwhelming. "You don't have to do this," she whispered for the 5th time since they'd arrived. "We've established that I do," Alexander replied, not looking up from his phone. He was clearing his afternoon, rescheduling meetings, delegating tasks. His COO had sent 3 increasingly concerned messages asking if everything was all right. Maria Santos? A nurse appeared in scrubs that probably cost more than Maria's monthly rent. "The doctor will see you now." Maria stood, then hesitated. "Sophia." "I'll watch her," Alexander said. Both Maria and Sophia stared at him like he'd suggested juggling fire. "You've never watched a child in your life," Maria said flatly. "How hard can it be? She's 3, not a hostile shareholder." Despite everything, Maria almost smiled. "Mr. Pierce. We'll be fine. Go." Maria kissed Sophia's forehead and whispered something in Spanish that made the little girl nod solemnly. Then she followed the nurse, glancing back 3 times before disappearing through the door. Alexander found himself alone with the toddler for the first time in his life. Sophia regarded him with her mother's dark, serious eyes, hugging her rabbit. "So," he said, "what do you do?" "I'm 3, Sophia replied, as if this explained everything.
"Right.
Of course." Alexander had negotiated billion-dollar deals with international conglomerates. Surely he could manage a conversation with a preschooler. "Do you want to sit?" Sophia climbed into the chair next to him, her legs sticking straight out, feet not touching the ground. They sat in silence for approximately 30 seconds before she spoke again. "Mama says you live in a castle." "It's a penthouse, not a castle." "What's a penthouse?" "An apartment at the top of a building." "Like a tower?" "I suppose, yes." "Then it's a castle." Sophia nodded with finality. "Do you have a princess?"
"No."
"Why not?" "Because I'm not a prince. I'm a businessman." Sophia considered this. Businessmans don't get princesses? Apparently not. She seemed deeply troubled by this. "That's sad." Before Alexander could respond, she slid off her chair and walked to the magazine table, returning with a children's book someone had left there. She thrust it at him. "Read." "I don't think. Mama reads to me when I'm scared." "I'm scared now." "So you read." It wasn't a request. This tiny human was giving him an order, and somehow, Alexander found himself obeying. He opened the book, something about a bear who couldn't sleep, and began reading in the same voice he used for board presentations. "Not like that," Sophia interrupted. "You have to do the voices." "I don't do voices." She fixed him with a look that would have made his CFO proud. "Then I'll teach you." For the next 45 minutes, Sophia Santos gave Alexander Pierce a masterclass in storytelling. She corrected his tone, demonstrated proper sound effects, and insisted he read certain pages twice because he didn't put enough feeling in it. By the time Maria emerged from the examination room, Alexander had read 4 books and learned that he did a pretty good owl impression, but his rabbit voice needed work. "Sophia, were you bothering Mr. Pierce?" Maria's voice was strained. "No, we're friends now," Sophia announced. "He's not very good at stories yet, but he's learning." Dr. Chen appeared behind Maria, and Alexander's attention snapped to the doctor's expression. He'd made enough deals, read enough faces, to know when news was bad. "Mr. Pierce, could I speak with you and Miss Santos privately?" Alexander's driver appeared like magic to take Sophia to the building's cafe, armed with money for hot chocolate and cookies. Once they were alone in the consultation room, Dr. Chen laid out Maria's file. "Miss Santos, you have pneumonia. Severe pneumonia. Your left lung has significant inflammation, and your immune system is critically compromised." The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "If you'd waited another week, You could have been facing respiratory failure. Maria's face went white. But I felt bad, but not that bad. You've been ignoring symptoms because you couldn't afford to stop working, Dr. Chen said. It wasn't a question. Your body has been fighting this infection for weeks, and it's losing. We need to start aggressive antibiotic treatment immediately, and you need complete bed rest for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Maria's voice cracked. I can't, my job. Your job nearly killed you, Alexander said quietly. Maria turned to him, tears spilling over.
You don't understand.
I can't not work for 2 weeks. I'll lose my apartment. You still work for me, Alexander interrupted. You're on medical leave. Full pay. When you're better, we'll discuss your return. Mr. Pierce. And you're not recovering in that apartment. He'd been thinking about this while reading about the sleepy bear. It's too cold. You're alone with a 3-year-old, and you need proper care. I have guest rooms. Multiple guest rooms. You and Sophia will stay with me until you're well. Maria stared at him. Dr. Chen stared at him. Even Alexander was a bit surprised by his own words, but now that he'd said them, they felt right. I can't impose on you like that, Maria whispered. You're not imposing. I'm offering. Alexander stood, signaling the decision was made. Dr. Chen, what else does she need? The doctor recovered quickly, outlining prescriptions, follow-up appointments, warning signs to watch for. Alexander absorbed it all, already mentally organizing schedules, arranging for a home health aide, calculating what needed to happen. This was what he was good at, solving problems, allocating resources, making things work. The fact that the problem was a sick employee rather than a failing business unit didn't change the fundamental approach. Except it did. Because when he looked at Maria, at the way she was struggling not to cry, at the fear and relief and confusion warring across her face, he felt something he normally didn't feel in business transactions. He felt responsible, not for her employment status, but for her, for Sophia, for making sure they were okay. I'll have my driver bring your belongings from the apartment, he said. Give me your keys and a list of what you need. This is too much. It's not enough. The words came out before he could stop them. You've been working in my home for 8 months, sick for 3 weeks, and I never noticed. I never asked if you were okay. I was too busy being annoyed that you were disrupting my schedule. He met her eyes. So, let me do this. Please. Maria pulled her keys from her purse with shaking hands. The green key is for the building, the gold one for my apartment. Sophia's things are in the left closet. She'll need her blue blanket, the one with stars. She can't sleep without it. And there's a photo album on the shelf. My daughter needs to see pictures of her father before bed. I promised her. Her voice broke entirely then, and she covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. All the fear and exhaustion and desperate strength she'd been holding together came spilling out. Alexander stood frozen for a moment, then did something that surprised him. He put a hand on her shoulder, awkward but genuine. You're going to be okay, he said. Both of you. I promise. He wasn't sure why he was making promises to his housekeeper. Wasn't sure why her well-being had suddenly become his personal mission. He only knew that walking away now was impossible. Dr. Chen handed him prescriptions and instructions. Start these tonight. Make sure she rests, and I mean actual rest, Mr. Pierce. No trying to clean your house, no thinking about work. She needs to sleep and heal. Understood. They collected Sophia from the cafe, where she'd apparently charmed Alexander's driver into buying her not 1 but 3 cookies. She bounced over to Maria, then stopped, seeing her mother's tear-stained face. Mama, are you more sick?
No, Mija.
I'm going to get better. Maria pulled her daughter close. We're going to stay with Mr. Pierce for a little while, okay? Would that be all right? Sophia's eyes went wide. In the castle? It's not Alexander started, then stopped at Maria's weak smile.
Yes.
In the castle? Do castles have cookies? Mine does now. The drive back to his penthouse was quiet. Maria dozed against the window, finally allowing herself to rest. Sophia sat between them, alternating between watching the city pass by and studying Alexander like he was a puzzle she was determined to solve. "Mr. Pierce?" she whispered, apparently understanding that her mother needed quiet. "Yes. Thank you for helping my mama." She said it so simply, so sincerely, that Alexander felt something crack in his chest, some wall he'd built years ago to keep business separate from everything else. "You're welcome, Sophia." She smiled, then returned to watching the buildings grow taller as they approached his neighborhood. Alexander looked at Maria's reflection in the window, at the worry lines that shouldn't be on a 28-year-old's face, at the way she held her daughter even in sleep. He'd come to her apartment to fire her, to cut ties cleanly and efficiently, the way he always did. But sitting in his car with a sleeping woman and her solemn 3-year-old, Alexander realized his life was about to get very complicated. And for the first time in years, he didn't mind. Maria woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of light that suggested afternoon rather than morning. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the air too perfectly climate-controlled. Then it came rushing back. Dr. Chen's diagnosis, Alexander Pierce's impossible offer, the ride to his penthouse with Sophia chattering about castles. She sat up too quickly and immediately regretted it as the room spun. Her lungs ached with each breath, reminding her exactly why she was here. The guest room was larger than her entire apartment. Minimalist furniture in shades of cream and gray, abstract art on the walls, and a view of Central Park that probably cost more per month than she made in a year. On the nightstand, her medications were arranged in precise rows next to a glass of water and a note in bold handwriting. "Take the blue pills with food. Kitchen is down the hall. AP." She found her suitcase in the corner. Someone must have retrieved it from her apartment while she slept. Next to it was Sophia's smaller bag, with her blue star blanket spilling out. But where was Sophia? Maria stood on shaky legs, pulled on a robe she found hanging in the closet, and ventured into the hallway. The penthouse was even more impressive in daylight. All clean lines and expensive materials, the kind of place featured in architecture magazines. The kind of place where a sick housekeeper and her toddler definitely didn't belong. Voices led her to an enormous kitchen where she found a scene she couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. Alexander Pierce, still in his dress shirt and slacks from yesterday, sat at the kitchen island with Sophia. They were making pancakes. Or rather, Sophia was making pancakes while Alexander watched with the expression of a man defusing a bomb. "More batter," Sophia commanded, wielding a whisk like a scepter. "We've made 12 pancakes," Alexander said carefully. "How many can you eat?"
Lots.
"And Mama needs some too. Sick people need pancakes." "I don't think that's medically accurate." "Mama?" Sophia spotted her in the doorway and slid off her stool. "You waked up. Mr. Pierce said I had to be very quiet, but I was helping make breakfast, and I was super quiet. Wasn't I quiet?" "Very quiet," Alexander confirmed, meeting Maria's eyes with an expression she couldn't quite read. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was hit by a truck." Maria moved to the island, her body protesting every step. "Sophia, you shouldn't be bothering Mr. Pierce." "She's not a bother," Alexander interrupted. "She's been teaching me about pancake construction. Apparently I've been making them wrong my entire life." "You put the chocolate chips in after you flip," Sophia explained seriously. "Not before. That's the rule." "I stand corrected." Alexander slid a plate across the counter to Maria. "You should eat. You've been asleep for 14 hours. 14? Maria looked at the clock. 2:30 in the afternoon. "Sophia, did you sleep here?" "I should have." "She slept in the guest room next to yours," Alexander said. "Mrs. Patterson stayed the night to keep an eye on her. She's my housekeeper. Well, my other housekeeper. She left about an hour ago, but she'll be back tomorrow." Maria felt tears threatening again. You hired someone to watch my daughter? Mrs. Patterson works for me anyway. She just worked different hours last night. He said it like it was nothing, like completely rearranging his staff schedule for her child was perfectly normal.
Sit. Eat.
Take your medications. Maria sat because her legs wouldn't hold her much longer. Sophia climbed into the stool next to her, chattering about the castle and her room. It has its own bathroom, Mama, and how Mr. Pierce didn't know any good bedtime stories, so she had to teach him. I read her the same bear book 4 times, Alexander said dryly. Apparently my owl impression has improved, but I still can't do the mouse correctly. Mouses are hard, Sophia said sympathetically, patting his hand. Watching her daughter interact so comfortably with Alexander Pierce felt surreal. Sophia had always been shy around strangers, but she seemed to have decided Alexander was safe. Maybe it was the pancakes. Or maybe children sense things adults had learned to hide from. Mr. Pierce, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done, but I need to talk to you about. After you eat and take your medication, he interrupted. Dr. Chun was very specific about the order of operations. So Maria ate chocolate chip pancakes that were surprisingly good, watched her daughter steal bites from Alexander's plate, and tried to process how her life had changed in 24 hours. Yesterday, she'd been terrified of losing her job, of ending up on the street with her daughter. Today, she was eating breakfast, or was it lunch, in a penthouse with the man who could afford to solve her problems without noticing the expense. It should have felt like charity, like pity. But the way Alexander interacted with Sophia, asking her questions about her drawings and seriously considering her opinions on pancake toppings, suggested something more complicated than simple generosity. After they ate, Sophia announced she was going to play in her room. Alexander walked Maria to the living room, where windows overlooked the park and the late afternoon sun painted everything gold. We need to discuss the arrangement, he said once they were alone. Here it comes, Maria thought. The conditions, the expectations, the price of his kindness. I want to be clear about something, Alexander continued, standing by the window with his hands in his pockets. You don't work for me while you're recovering. You're a guest in my home. No cleaning, no cooking, no trying to earn your keep. Your only job is to get better. Mr. Pierce. I know what you're thinking. He turned to face her. You're wondering what I want in exchange. What the catch is. Because nobody does something like this for nothing, right? Maria said nothing, but he'd read her correctly. The truth is, I don't know why I'm doing this, he admitted. I should have fired you yesterday. That was the plan. That's what I would have done last month, last year. But standing in your apartment, hearing your daughter cry because she was scared for you. He paused. My father died when I was 15. Heart attack. He'd been sick for months but kept working because he couldn't afford to stop. I watched him deteriorate, watched him choose paying the bills over taking care of himself. I swore I'd never let that happen to anyone I was responsible for. Maria's throat tightened. I'm sorry about your father. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand that this isn't charity. He struggled for the word. It's preventing a future where Sophia stands at your grave the way I stood at my father's. Does that make sense? More than you know. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. She thought of Sophia's father, of the grave her daughter visited every month, leaving flowers and telling stories to a headstone. Sophia's father, Eduardo, he died 2 years ago. Brain aneurysm.
Sudden.
He'd been complaining of headaches, but we kept thinking it was stress, that he just needed rest. She had to stop, breathe, compose herself. If he'd seen a doctor earlier, maybe they could have caught it. But we didn't have insurance, and clinic visits cost money we needed for rent and food and diapers. Alexander's expression softened. I'm sorry. Eduardo was a good man. He worked construction, saved every penny so Sophia could have more than we did. He never got to see her turn 2. Maria wiped her eyes. When he died, I promised him I'd take care of our daughter, no matter what. that she'd never go hungry, never be unsafe. But lately, I've been breaking that promise. Working while sick, leaving her scared and alone, barely able to stand up. You were doing the best you could. Was I? Or was I just too proud to ask for help? She met his eyes. You offering to let us stay here, paying for my medical care, it goes against everything I've tried to teach Sophia. That we don't take handouts. That we earn what we have. That we're strong enough on our own. Strength isn't refusing help, Alexander said quietly. It's knowing when to accept it. Before Maria could respond, Sophia appeared in the doorway holding a piece of paper. Mama, I drawed you something. The drawing showed 3 stick figures in front of a building with windows. 1 tall figure in a suit, 1 medium figure with long hair, and 1 small figure holding what might be a rabbit. That's you and me and Mr. Pierce, Sophia explained. In the castle.
See?
We're all smiling because you're getting better and there's pancakes. Maria pulled her daughter close, pressing a kiss to her hair. Over Sophia's head, she saw Alexander studying the drawing with an expression she couldn't quite name. Something like wonder. Like he'd been handed something precious and wasn't sure he deserved to hold it. It's beautiful, Mija, Maria whispered. The best drawing yet. Can we put it on the wall like at home? This isn't Maria started, but Alexander interrupted. The refrigerator has a magnetic surface, he said. That's where art belongs, isn't it? Sophia beamed and ran to the kitchen. Maria and Alexander were left in awkward silence. I'm changing all your rules, Maria said finally. I don't have rules about refrigerator art. You will after a 3-year-old lives here for 2 weeks. Then I'll adapt. He said it like it was simple, but Maria knew better. Men like Alexander Pierce didn't adapt. They controlled environments, managed variables, kept everything in careful order. A sick woman and an energetic toddler weren't compatible with that lifestyle. That evening, after more medication and a dinner Alexander had ordered from what was apparently his favorite restaurant, Maria found herself on the couch while Sophia showed Alexander her coloring books. He sat on the floor, Alexander Pierce, billionaire real estate mogul, sitting cross-legged on his expensive rug while a 3-year-old explained her color choices. Purple is a good sky color, Sophia insisted. The sky is blue. Sometimes it's purple. At sunset. You have to look. I'll take your word for it. No, you have to look.
Come on.
Sophia grabbed his hand and pulled him to the window, where the sky was indeed turning shades of lavender and rose.
See?
Purple. Alexander looked at the sunset, then at Sophia's triumphant face, and something in his expression shifted. You're right. I should look more often. Maria watched them silhouette against the window, the man who'd come to fire her and the daughter who'd somehow decided he was worth teaching about purple skies, and felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years.
Hope.
Maybe they'd be okay. Maybe this impossible situation would work. Maybe, just maybe, they'd all come out of this different than they went in. The next 5 days established a routine that would have seemed impossible the week before. Maria woke each morning to sunlight and silence, took her medications with the breakfast Alexander left on her nightstand, and allowed herself the luxury of rest. Real rest, without worrying about bills or shifts or whether Sophia had eaten. Sophia, meanwhile, had declared herself Alexander's personal assistant. She followed him through morning meetings conducted from his home office, sat quietly during conference calls, mostly, and offered commentary on his business decisions that was surprisingly insightful for a 3-year-old. That man sounds mean, she whispered during one video call. You shouldn't work with mean people. Alexander had muted his microphone. That mean man is the head of acquisitions for a Fortune 500 company. Still mean. His face is scrunchy. Later, Alexander would admit Sophia had been right. The deal fell through because the executive tried to renegotiate at the last minute. Your daughter has good instincts, he told Maria. Maria had laughed until she started coughing. She learned from watching her father negotiate with landlords. The penthouse was changing too. Sophia's drawings accumulated on the refrigerator. Her toys migrated from the guest room to the living room despite Maria's attempts to contain them. The pristine kitchen developed a collection of plastic cups at toddler height. Mrs. Patterson, Alexander's regular housekeeper, took it all in stride and even started keeping crackers in her pocket for Sophia's snack emergencies. On the third day, Alexander came home from a rare in-person meeting to find Maria and Sophia in the library. Maria was reading aloud from a picture book while Sophia acted out the story, using throw pillows as props. They both looked up guiltily when he entered. "Sorry," Maria said quickly. "Sophia wanted to explore, and I thought this room wasn't used much." "It wasn't," Alexander interrupted. "But it should be. A library should have readers." He looked at the shelves lined with first editions and leather-bound volumes he'd bought for display, never opened. "What are you reading?" "The Velveteen Rabbit," Sophia announced. "It's about being real through love. Do you know it?" "I don't think so." "Mr. Pierce doesn't know any good stories," Sophia told her mother seriously. "We have to teach him." So Maria read while Alexander listened, standing in the doorway of his own library, like a stranger in his own home. He watched Sophia lean against her mother, watched Maria's face soften as she did the voices, watched them exist in a bubble of warmth that made his expensive furniture and carefully curated art feel hollow. When the story ended, Sophia looked up at him. "Did you like it?" "I did." "Want us to read another one?" He should have said no. He had calls to return, reports to review, a business empire to manage. Instead, he sat in the leather chair his decorator had chosen and said, "Yes, I'd like that." They read 3 more stories. When Sophia fell asleep against her mother's side, Maria carefully extracted herself and carried her daughter to bed. She returned to find Alexander still in the library, holding the Velveteen Rabbit book. "Eduardo used to read this to her," Maria said softly, sitting in the chair Sophia had vacated. "He did better voices than me." Made her laugh until she couldn't breathe. She smiled at the memory. He was ridiculous like that. Serious construction worker all day, but at home he'd have tea parties with stuffed animals and paint his toenails if Sophia asked. "He sounds like he was a good father."
The best.
"Sophia looks like me, but she's got his heart, big and generous and trusting." Maria's voice caught. "Sometimes I see him in her expressions. The way she tilts her head when she's thinking. How she laughs with her whole body. Those moments hurt and heal at the same time." Alexander set down the book. "How do you do it?" "Raise her alone. Work full-time. Keep going when everything must remind you of what you lost. Because stopping isn't an option. I have a daughter who needs me." Maria met his eyes. "You asked why I didn't tell you I was sick. The truth? I was terrified. You were my best job. Good pay, reasonable hours. You never asked me to do anything inappropriate. I couldn't risk losing that. Couldn't risk ending up desperate enough to take jobs that—" She trailed off. "That what?" "You'd be surprised what some employers expect for $12 an hour," she said quietly. "Or maybe you wouldn't be. Maybe you know exactly what it's like when you have no power and someone else has all of it." Alexander felt sick. "Did someone?"
No.
"But only because I walked away from situations that might have gone that direction. Which meant walking away from income we needed. It's a calculation you make when you're alone with a child. Which risks are acceptable? Which aren't?" She laughed bitterly. "Working while sick enough to collapse? That was an acceptable risk. Finding out if an employer who stood too close was dangerous? Not acceptable. I'm sorry you've had to make those choices. Don't be sorry. Just understand why trusting you with this," she gestured around the penthouse, "is terrifying. I'm putting my daughter and myself in your hands. If you change your mind, if you decide we're too much trouble, we're more vulnerable now than we were before." "I'm not going to change my mind." "You say that now. But Sophia's loud sometimes. She makes messes. I'm sick and useless, and we're disrupting your life in ways you probably haven't even noticed yet. Maria's voice rose. Your assistant called yesterday asking when you'd be back in the office. Your COO sent an email marked urgent that Sophia accidentally opened when she was playing with your tablet. People are wondering where you are, what you're doing, and eventually you're going to realize that 2 weeks of playing house with your housekeeper isn't worth the complications. Is that what you think this is? Playing house. I don't know what this is. Maria stood, agitated. I don't know why you're doing any of this. Successful men don't bring home sick employees and their children out of the goodness of their hearts. There's always an angle, always something they want in return, and I need to know what you want from me before I let my daughter get any more attached to you. The words hung in the air between them. Alexander stood slowly. You want to know what I want? His voice was low, controlled, but there was heat beneath it. I want to stop seeing my father's face every time I look at you. I want to stop wondering how many of my employees are suffering in silence because I'm too busy being efficient to notice. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I want to feel like I'm part of something real instead of just managing assets and maximizing returns. So, we're your redemption project? Maria's eyes flashed. A way to feel better about yourself? Maybe. He didn't flinch from the accusation. Would that be so terrible? If helping you also helps me become less of the person I came to your apartment to be?
Yes.
Because what happens when you're done becoming a better person? When the novelty wears off, and we're just complications in your perfect life again. Then I deal with those complications. His voice rose to match hers. I figure it out. I adapt. I do whatever it takes to make sure you and Sophia are okay because... He stopped abruptly. Because what? Alexander looked at her, this woman who'd turned his carefully ordered world inside out, and told the truth. Because in 5 days, you and your daughter have made this place feel more like a home than it has in the 8 years I've owned it. Because Sophia asks me questions nobody else dares to ask and doesn't care that I'm a billionaire. Because when you smile at her, I see what unconditional love looks like, and it makes me wonder what the hell I've been doing with my life. He took a breath. Because I came to fire you, and instead you're teaching me what matters. So yes, maybe you're my redemption project. But you're also people I'm starting to care about, and I don't do that easily. Maria stared at him, breathing hard, and something in her expression shifted. Not trust, not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. I need to know you understand what you're signing up for, she said quietly. Sophia's going to ask why she can't stay in the castle forever. She's going to cry when we leave because she'll have gotten used to pancakes and stories and having someone besides me who cares. And when that happens, when she asks me why Mr. Pierce doesn't want us anymore, I'm going to have to explain that this was temporary. That nice things don't last for people like us. What if they could? Don't. Maria's voice broke. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. Don't give my daughter hope about a life she can't have. Who says she can't have it? Reality. Economics. The fact that I'm your housekeeper and she gestured helplessly. You. Before Alexander could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. Mama? Why are you yelling? Sophia stood in her pajamas, clutching her star blanket, looking between them with worried eyes. Maria immediately went to her, kneeling down. I'm sorry, Mija. I didn't mean to wake you. Are you mad at Mr. Pierce?
No, sweetheart.
We were just talking. Grown-up talking?
Yes.
Grown-up talking. Maria smoothed her daughter's hair. Let's get you back to bed. Can Mr. Pierce come too? For story time. Maria looked at Alexander over her daughter's head. He nodded. So they went to Sophia's room, the guest room that had become hers over the past 5 days, decorated with her drawings and stuffed animals from home. Sophia climbed into bed and patted the space beside her. Sit here, Mama. Mr. Pierce, you sit there. They arranged themselves according to her instructions, and Sophia pulled out a photo album from under her pillow. Alexander recognized it from the list Maria had given him of things to retrieve from the apartment. "This is my papa," Sophia said, opening to a picture of a man in his early 30s with kind eyes and a wide smile. "He's in heaven now, but I show him to people so they know what he looks like. Mama says it's important to remember." Alexander studied the photo. Eduardo had his arm around Maria, who looked younger, lighter, her smile unguarded. She was pregnant in the picture, glowing with it. "That was the day we found out I was having a girl," Maria said softly. Eduardo cried. Happy tears. He'd wanted a daughter so badly. Sophia turned pages, narrating each photo. Eduardo holding newborn Sophia. Eduardo teaching her to walk. Eduardo covered in finger paint, laughing. In every picture, love radiated from him, for his wife, for his daughter, for the life they were building. "He looks like he was a wonderful man," Alexander said. "He was." Sophia closed the album. "But he got sick like Mama, and he didn't wake up. The doctor said his brain broke. I'm sorry that happened." "Me too. But Mama says Papa watches us from heaven and makes sure we're safe." Sophia looked at Alexander seriously. "Do you think he sent you to help Mama when she got sick?" The question caught him off guard. Maria looked equally stunned. "Sophia, that's not," Maria started. "Maybe he did," Alexander heard himself say. "If I were watching from heaven and saw someone I loved getting sick, I'd want to send help too." Sophia smiled, satisfied with this answer. "I knew it. Papa's good at finding helpers." She yawned enormously. "Can you read me the one about the moon?" They read Goodnight Moon, Sophia's eyes growing heavy halfway through. By the end, she was asleep, one hand holding Maria's, the other stretched toward Alexander. In the doorway, Maria whispered, "You didn't have to say that." About her father. "I meant it." Alexander looked at the sleeping child. "If there's any justice in the universe, he's watching over you both. And if I can help, even temporarily, maybe I'm part of that plan. You're starting to believe in things you can't quantify on a spreadsheet." "Maybe I am." They stood in the hallway, the penthouse quiet around them. Maria spoke first. "2 weeks ago, I was so tired, I could barely think. Working myself sick, terrified of losing everything, looking at my daughter and wondering how long I could keep juggling before I dropped something crucial." She turned to him. "You caught what I dropped. You didn't have to, but you did. I don't understand why, but I'm starting to believe you mean what you say about wanting to help." "I do." "Then I need you to promise me something." Maria's voice was steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "When these 2 weeks are over, when I'm better and we go back to our real lives, promise me you won't disappear completely from Sophia's life. You don't have to be a big part of it. Just don't become a stranger. She's lost too many people already." Alexander thought about the little girl who taught him to make pancakes and do story voices, who decided he was worth her trust and friendship. The idea of becoming a stranger to her made his chest ache. "I promise," he said. "No matter what happens, I won't be a stranger." Maria nodded, wiped her eyes, and went to her own room. Alexander stood alone in the hallway of his penthouse that no longer felt quite like his, listening to the quiet sounds of people sleeping, and wondered when exactly his carefully controlled life had become something he was willing to change for 2 people he'd known less than a week. On the 7th day, Alexander woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter. He found Maria in the kitchen teaching Sophia to crack eggs, both of them covered in flour from what appeared to be an ambitious baking project. "You're supposed to be resting," he said from the doorway. Maria turned, and he was struck by how different she looked. The color had returned to her face, her eyes were clear, and she moved without the exhaustion that had weighted her down before. "I'm feeling better," she said. "Dr. Chen said gentle activity is fine now. And Sophia wanted to make you thank you muffins. They're banana chocolate chip," Sophia announced. "Those are the best kind because they're basically dessert, but Mama says they're breakfast." Solid reasoning. Alexander poured himself coffee, watching them work. This domestic scene should have felt intrusive, wrong. Instead it felt right. Can I help? You can taste test the batter, Sophia said generously. So Alexander found himself sampling raw muffin batter at 7 in the morning while a 3-year-old critiqued his assessment. You have to say more than just good, Mr. Pierce. Is it sweet enough? Is it chocolatey? Use describing words. The muffins went into the oven, and Maria sent Sophia to get dressed. Once they were alone, she turned to Alexander. I need to talk to you about what happens next. He'd been dreading this conversation. You're feeling better. You want to go home. I want to go back to work, actually. Back to my regular schedule. She held up a hand when he started to protest. Dr. Chin cleared me for light duty. And I've been thinking about what you said, about not disappearing from Sophia's life. I want to propose something. I'm listening. What if I keep working for you, but we adjust my hours? I come in after I drop Sophia at daycare, leave early enough to pick her up. You pay me the same rate, just for fewer hours. That way I'm not working myself into the ground. I'm still earning my way, and Sophia gets more time with her mother. And you'd be okay coming back to work for me? After everything? After everything, I trust you more than I trust most people. Maria met his eyes. You could have held my situation over me, could have made demands or expected something in return for helping. But you didn't. You just helped. That's rare in my experience. Alexander felt something shift in his chest. I'd like to propose a counteroffer. Of course you would. You're a businessman. Keep your same salary, but work fewer hours like you suggested. Use the extra time to take classes, get a degree, learn a trade, whatever interests you. I'll cover the tuition. Alexander. It was the first time she'd used his first name. He noticed. Hear me out. You're intelligent, capable, and clearly good at managing complex situations. You're wasted just cleaning houses. Not that there's anything wrong with that work, but you could do more if you had the opportunity. I can't let you pay for my education. Why not? I invest in people all the time. Companies, startups, ventures that might fail. Consider it an investment in someone I know won't fail. Maria looked at him for a long moment. What do you get out of this? A better educated housekeeper? He smiled slightly. A clear conscience? Does it matter?
Yes.
It matters. Because I need to know this isn't about, she struggled for words. That you're not expecting this to become something it can't be. You mean romantically? Alexander said bluntly. Yes. He set down his coffee cup. I'll be honest with you, Maria. I don't know what this is. I know I care about you and Sophia. I know that having you here has made me realize how empty my life was. But I also know that any kind of relationship beyond employer-employee would be inappropriate and complicated in ways neither of us needs. So, this is just about being helpful? About redemption? Maybe it started that way. But now... He looked around the kitchen at the evidence of lives being lived in his space. Now I think I'm learning what it means to care about people outside a business context. And yes, I find you attractive and intelligent, and I like talking to you. But that doesn't mean I expect or want to pursue anything beyond friendship and mutual respect. Maria absorbed this. Okay, then I counter your counteroffer. I'll take classes if you do. What? You said your life feels empty. That we've shown you what matters. So take a class in something that interests you personally, not professionally. Learn something just for the joy of learning it. If I'm investing in bettering myself, you should too. Alexander blinked. I don't have time for classes. You have time.
You choose not to use it that way.
That's different. She crossed her arms. That's my condition. We both grow, or neither of us does. That's manipulative. I learned from the best. She smiled. So? Deal? He should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries, kept his life separate from hers. Instead, he found himself smiling back.
Deal.
But I get to approve your course selection. Only if I get to approve yours. They shook hands, and Alexander felt like he'd just negotiated something far more important than any business deal. The timer dinged. Maria pulled out the muffins, perfect and golden. Sophia appeared, dressed in a princess costume she'd apparently found in her suitcase. Are they ready? Can we eat them now? Let them cool first, Mija. But I'm hungry now. Then have some yogurt while you wait. Patience is a virtue. Patience is boring, Sophia grumbled, but she accepted the yogurt. Alexander's phone rang, his assistant, probably wondering why he was missing yet another morning meeting. He looked at it, then at Maria and Sophia eating yogurt in his kitchen, muffins cooling on the counter, and made a choice. He declined the call. Everything okay? Maria asked. Everything's fine. They can wait. They ate muffins at the kitchen island, Sophia critiquing the recipe, more chocolate chips next time, and planning her day. Can we go to the park? Please? Mama's better now, so we can go outside. The park sounds nice, Maria agreed. We should get some fresh air. Mr. Pierce should come too. Mr. Pierce's work, sweetheart. Actually, Alexander heard himself say, I could move some things around. Take a few hours. Maria raised her eyebrows. The billionaire is playing hooky? Learning about work-life balance. You're teaching me, remember? So they went to Central Park, the three of them incongruous among the nannies and mothers and retired couples. Sophia ran ahead to the playground, and Alexander found himself on a bench with Maria, watching her daughter climb and swing and laugh. She looks like him when she laughs, Maria said softly. Eduardo. That same pure joy. Do you miss him? Every day, but differently now. At first, it was this crushing grief that made it hard to breathe. Now it's more like an ache, a space where he should be. She glanced at Alexander. Does that make sense? Yes. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Sophia make friends with another child, their shared language of play transcending their lack of shared words. Can I ask you something? Maria said eventually. Why don't you have someone? Wife, girlfriend, partner. I'm difficult to be with. Controlling. Married to my work. Alexander shrugged. Every relationship I've attempted ended with some variation of you care more about your business than about me. And they were right. Past tense. Sitting here, watching a 3-year-old play instead of being in a meeting about quarterly projections? Maybe. He looked at her. What about you? Have you thought about dating again? With what time? What energy? I barely manage work and Sophia as it is. Maria sighed. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to. Eduardo was it for me. The idea of trying to find that again feels exhausting and pointless. Not pointless, just daunting. Same thing when you're too tired to be daunted. Sophia ran over, breathless and glowing. There's an ice cream man. Can I have ice cream? Please. Maria checked her watch. It's 10 in the morning. But it's special park ice cream. I'll make you a deal, Alexander said. If you can explain why ice cream before lunch makes sense, I'll buy it. Sophia's face scrunched in concentration. Because Mama's better, and that's celebrating, and you celebrate with ice cream, and it's Tuesday, which is a hard day, so we should have treats. Compelling argument. What flavor? Chocolate. They walked to the ice cream cart, Sophia between them holding both their hands, and Alexander tried to remember the last time he'd done something this simple. This pointless and perfect. He couldn't. That evening, after Sophia was in bed, Maria found Alexander in his office. He was actually working for the first time in days, reviewing contracts and financial reports that had piled up. Sorry to interrupt, she said from the doorway. You're not. I could use a break. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. What's on your mind? I've been thinking about your offer. The education thing. She sat, twisting her hands. I want to do it, but I'm scared. Of what? Failing. Wasting your money. Proving that I'm not as capable as you seem to think I am. She laughed shakily. I dropped out of high school when I got pregnant with Sophia. Got my GED later, but I've never been to college. What if I can't handle it? Then you'll struggle and learn and eventually figure it out. That's how education works. Easy for you to say. You probably never struggled academically in your life. I failed organic chemistry twice, Alexander said. Nearly lost my scholarship. Had to take it a third time in summer school while working 2 jobs to pay for it. Maria stared. You? Failed. Spectacularly. My professor said I was the most stubborn student he'd ever taught. I kept trying to argue with chemical bonds like they were business negotiations. He smiled at the memory. My point is, struggling doesn't mean you're not capable. It means you're learning. What made you keep trying? After failing twice. Pride, mostly. And fear that if I didn't finish, I'd end up like my father, brilliant but broken by a system that didn't value him. Alexander's expression sobered. He never got the chances I got. Died before he could see me succeed. That's driven everything I've done since. Eduardo never got to see Sophia grow up, Maria said quietly. Never got to teach her to ride a bike or walk her to school or any of the things we planned. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Sometimes I'm angry at him for dying, for leaving me alone with this. Then I feel guilty for being angry because it wasn't his fault. Grief isn't logical.
No.
But it's exhausting. She wiped her eyes.
Sorry.
I didn't come in here to cry all over you. You can cry all over me if you need to. Maria laughed through her tears. Careful. I might take you up on that. They talked for another hour about loss and fear and the strange paths that had led them both to this moment. Eventually, Maria stood to go to bed, pausing at the door. Alexander?
Thank you.
For everything. For seeing us. For caring. Thank you for teaching me how. After she left, Alexander sat in his office, surrounded by work that suddenly felt less important. He thought about the life he'd built, successful but solitary, rich but empty. Then he thought about muffins and ice cream and a little girl who believed in purple skies. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he couldn't go back to how things were before. The 2 weeks became 3, then 4. Maria was fully recovered, but whenever she mentioned moving back to her apartment, Alexander found reasons to delay. The apartment building was having heating issues. He'd paid to fix them. Her landlord was renovating. He'd quietly purchased the building and was actually renovating it. Sophia was thriving in the routine. This was undeniably true. On a Saturday morning in the 5th week, Maria found Alexander in the kitchen making pancakes. He'd gotten quite good at them.
We need to talk, she said.
He didn't look up from the griddle. I know. We can't stay here forever. Why not? Because this isn't our home. Because you've done more than enough. Because Sophia is getting too attached, and so am I, and when this ends it's going to hurt. Maria's voice cracked. We need to go back to our real lives before we forget this isn't real. Alexander finally looked at her. What if I don't want you to go? Don't make this harder than it already is. I'm not trying to make it hard. I'm trying to tell you that I don't want you to leave. Either of you. He abandoned the pancakes. These past 5 weeks have been... I can't go back to how things were, Maria. I don't want to. What are you saying? I'm saying stay. Not as my employee. As my family. Maria stepped back like he'd struck her. That's not funny. I'm not joking. I've been thinking about this for weeks. I want to, he struggled for words. I want to be in your lives. In Sophia's life. I want to help her grow up, send her to good schools, make sure she has opportunities. I want to keep having breakfast together and going to the park and reading bedtime stories. You want to play house. I want a family. The words came out raw, honest. I'm 33 years old. I've built an empire, and I come home to silence every night. Then you and Sophia showed up, and suddenly my home felt alive. I don't want to lose that. So what? We just stay here? become your kept woman while you get to feel good about yourself.
No.
You stay here as my equal. We figure out what this is together. Alexander moved closer. I'm not asking you to be with me romantically. I know you're not ready for that, and maybe you never will be. But I want us to be a family, anyway. Unconventional, complicated, but real. That's insane. Probably. But is it more insane than going back to struggling alone when you don't have to? I've always struggled alone. But you don't have to anymore. His voice rose with frustration. Why is accepting help so impossible for you? Because I've learned that help comes with strings. That nothing is free, and eventually the bill comes due, and I can't. Maria's voice broke completely. I can't let my daughter think this is real, and then have it taken away. Eduardo's death almost destroyed me. I rebuilt from nothing for her. I can't risk her heart on someone who might change his mind. I'm not going to change my mind. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Alexander grabbed her shoulders gently. Maria, look at me. I spent 33 years not needing anyone, not letting anyone close, building walls so high I couldn't see over them. Then a 3-year-old taught me about purple skies, and suddenly those walls felt like a prison. I'm not going to change my mind because for the first time in my life, I don't want to. What about when you meet someone? Fall in love? Want your own children? What if I already have my own family? What if this is enough? Maria searched his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the inevitable betrayal. I don't understand how this would work. Neither do I. But we figure it out. He released her shoulders but didn't step back. You enroll in school. Keep working for me if you want, or find something else. Use the guest rooms, or I'll buy you a place nearby. We raise Sophia together, not as husband and wife, but as people who care about her and each other, who are tired of being alone. People will talk. They'll assume things. Let them. When have I ever cared what people think? Your business associates, your board of directors, can accept it or not. I really don't care anymore. He smiled slightly. You've ruined me for caring about things that don't matter. Maria wanted to say yes.
God, she wanted to say yes.
But fear held her back. Fear of trusting someone again, fear of Sophia getting hurt, fear that this impossible thing would somehow become everything and then crumble. Before she could respond, Sophia appeared in the doorway, carrying her stuffed rabbit and looking worried. Are you fighting again? She asked in a small voice.
No, Mija.
We're just talking. Grown-up talking? Very grown-up. Maria knelt down to her daughter's level. What's wrong, baby? I heard yelling. And I don't want to leave the castle. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I like it here. I like having pancakes with Mr. Pierce and reading stories and having my own room. Can't we stay? Maria looked up at Alexander helplessly. Sophia, we've talked about this. This is Mr. Pierce's home, not ours. But he wants us to stay. I heard him say it. Sophia turned to Alexander. You said you want us to be family. I want that too. Please. Alexander knelt beside Maria, at Sophia's level. I do want that. Very much. But your mama has to decide if it's the right thing for both of you. Mama, please. Sophia grabbed her mother's hand. I miss Papa, and I'm always going to miss him. But I love you and Mr. Pierce, and I want us to be together. Isn't that okay? The child's simple honesty broke something open in Maria's chest. She looked at her daughter, at Alexander, at the life being offered to them, and made a choice. If we do this, she said slowly, we need rules. Boundaries. I need to know what happens if it doesn't work out. We put it in writing, Alexander said immediately. Legal protections for you and Sophia. The apartment building I bought, it's yours in your name. If you ever want to leave, you have somewhere to go. I'll set up a trust for Sophia's education and future. Everything documented. Everything protected. You bought my apartment building? To fix the heating. But yes. Despite everything, Maria laughed. You're insane. Potentially. Is that a yes? She looked at Sophia's hopeful face, at Alexander's earnest expression, at the life she'd been terrified to want. It's a conditional yes. We try this for 6 months. If it works, we make it permanent. If it doesn't, we separate as friends and you stay in Sophia's life, but we find our own place.
Deal.
Alexander extended his hand. Maria shook it and Sophia cheered. That night, after signing papers and making plans and eating celebratory pancakes for dinner, Maria tucked Sophia into bed in the room that was now officially hers. "Mama?" Sophia whispered. "Is this real? Are we really staying?" "We're really staying, Mija. For now. Forever. We'll see. But for now, yes." Sophia hugged her rabbit. "I think Papa would like Mr. Pierce. They both try really hard to make us happy." Maria's throat tightened. "I think you're right." She found Alexander on the terrace, looking out at the city lights. He turned when she approached. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "Thousands of them. But I'm doing it anyway." She stood beside him. "Thank you. For this. For seeing us when you could have just fired me and moved on. Thank you for teaching me that there's more to life than quarterly profits and market share." They stood in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the unlikeliest of circumstances, until Maria spoke again. "I'm still not ready for anything romantic." "I know. And I might never be. Eduardo was my person." "I understand. And that's okay." Alexander turned to her. "This doesn't have to be a romance to be important. It just has to be real." It is real. Terrifyingly real. 6 months later, Maria graduated with highest honors from her first semester of community college. Alexander attended the ceremony with Sophia, who wore a dress she'd picked out herself and brought homemade congratulations cookies. Maria had taken 3 classes: accounting, business basics, and creative writing. She'd aced them all while working part-time for Alexander and being a full-time mother. Alexander had kept his end of the bargain too, enrolling in a cooking class where he'd learned to make things besides pancakes. They'd established their unconventional family, complete with Sunday dinners and homework help and arguments about bedtime. Alexander had a room in the penthouse. Maria and Sophia had theirs, and they navigated the space between with respect and growing affection. Alexander's business associates had initially been confused by his new living situation. But watching him in meetings now, more focused, more balanced, more human, they'd come to accept it. Some even envied it. Maria still worked for Alexander, but she was also taking business classes with an eye toward eventually managing properties. He'd offered to simply give her a management position, but she'd refused, wanting to earn it, to learn the skills properly. Sophia thrived, enrolled in a good preschool with her tuition covered by the trust Alexander had established. She still talked about her papa, still visited his grave with flowers, but she'd also made room in her heart for the man who made her pancakes and read her stories. On the anniversary of Eduardo's death, they all went to the cemetery together. Sophia laid flowers and talked to the headstone about her year, about school and friends, and Mr. Pierce, who was teaching her about purple skies and being brave. "Papa, I miss you," she said seriously. "But Mama's happy now. She smiles more. And Mr. Pierce takes care of us like you would want. Is that okay?" The wind rustled through the trees, and Sophia took it as answer. On the drive home, Alexander said quietly, "I hope I'm honoring his memory by taking care of you both." "You are," Maria assured him. "Eduardo would have liked you. He always said the measure of a man wasn't what he had, but what he gave. You've given us a life we never could have had alone. You've given me a reason to want that life." That evening, Alexander found Sophia in the library, carefully taping a new drawing to the wall. It showed 4 figures now: a tall man in a suit, a woman with long hair, a small girl, and a shadowy figure in the background with wings. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing to the winged figure. "Papa," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "He watches us from heaven." Mama says he'd be happy we're all together. So I drawed him watching us be a family. Alexander felt his eyes burn. I think he would be very happy. Me too. Sophia finished taping the picture. Mr. Pierce? Can I ask you something? Always. Are you my family now? Like, really and truly? Alexander knelt beside her. If you want me to be, then yes. Really and truly. Forever. He thought about the woman down the hall who'd taught him what mattered, about the little girl who'd shown him how to live, about the life they'd built from impossible circumstances. Forever, he promised. Sophia hugged him fiercely, and Alexander held her. This child who wasn't his by blood, but had become his by choice. When Maria appeared in the doorway, watching them with tears in her eyes, he extended his arm and she joined them, the three of them holding onto each other in a library that had finally found its purpose. Outside, the sky was turning purple with sunset, the way Sophia had taught him to notice. The way he'd been taught to see that life's most valuable moments couldn't be quantified on a spreadsheet or measured in quarterly returns. Alexander Pierce had built an empire on ruthless efficiency and careful calculation. But the best decision he'd ever made was the one that broke all his rules, following his maid home to fire her and finding instead the family he'd never known he needed. In the end, they saved each other. Maria and Sophia found security and opportunity, and someone who chose them every day. Alexander found purpose and love, and a reason to be more than his bank account. They became a family not despite their unconventional beginning, but because of it. Because sometimes the best things in life can't be planned or purchased or predicted. Sometimes they simply appear at your door in the form of a sick woman and her 3-year-old daughter, asking you to become the kind of person who chooses love over efficiency, connection over isolation, and purple skies over profit margins. And if you're very lucky, you say yes. 5 years later, Sophia would stand in that same library and ask Alexander to walk her down the aisle at Maria's wedding, to a kind professor who taught creative writing and made Maria laugh the way Eduardo once had. Alexander would say yes through tears, because that's what family did. And on the wall, preserved in a frame, would hang a child's drawing of 4 figures in front of a castle, a testament to the day a billionaire followed his maid home and found out what it meant to be truly wealthy. Asterisk.